We've been looking at the interviews themselves and the techniques for the interviews. But of course, before that, one of the important things is selecting what is going to be the subject matter. And if we're in a scientific meeting setting or in a planning or priority setting exercise, the key is to do the homework before on what the subject matter will be for each of the interviews. So starting with the subject matter. And these should be things that are going to be of interest and things that people want to know more about. So whether it's new science, whether it's controversial issues, whether it's science management issues, or issues that are poorly understood. That comes first. What are the top top priorities for that? And then identify who the key people are, and looking who the people will be who will best answer these difficult questions, the ones that are difficult. In the example that we see for a moment is the one for the Biosciences East Africa, and this was very much a subject that had come up, lots of infrastructure, lots of money being spent on an area where many people really didn't understand what it was, what was going to happen, and how it might compete with some of the things that are going on at ILRI, at the institute in question. Now we come to looking at the rather more sensitive interviewee, and that is someone, as in this case, a chairman of the board, and particularly if you're interviewing a chairman of the board in front of the directors and people who are reviewing, which was the case in this particular interview, one has got to be a little bit careful. And so there is a tendency for them to be much more formal, obviously, and always a tendency for more senior people to talk at length. And so one of the key things here is how to pick up points where you can interrupt. And so key is keeping the ears out for points that you can then lead on, butt in, and politely make some intervention and draw something else out that the interviewee was not going to say unless you did that.
The first layer is not science or skills, the first layer is representation.
Okay.
We really want the right blend of representation of shareholders and beneficiaries, if you want.
Okay, yes, I did notice on your coffee you said you introduced the new Norwegian board member and said it was a bit of a novelty that he was coming to represent science, which did... When you are the other side of the table, it's always good to be the other side of the table, because then you get an idea of what it's like, and you can think about it. But when, as in this case, I was on the wrong side of the table, I'm afraid, because of all the time you put in preparing questions when you're asking them, you always expect the worst. And in fact, my case, I overreact, and then I have the very naughty tendency of becoming playful and preferring to do all sorts of little things that I shouldn't to the person interviewing, which probably puts them off. But one of having advocated the use of specific questions to pull out information, the classic example in this particular case was how a general question that you're not prepared for can completely floor you.
What is it about? What do you do?
I thought you knew. I mean, you're supposed to be the theme director. I know you're leaving all this, Chris. The idea is to improve the chances for developing countries and the poorer sectors of society within those countries to, through livestock products, livestock commodities, to be able to have access to markets and to varying levels of markets, and through improved health and food safety, health at source from animal diseases, and food safety of the products along the value chain. Is that the right answer?
Okay, but what do you do?
I do various things. That's a very difficult question. That's the most difficult. I'd never thought of asking anyone that. You have a very good working relationship with Carlos, I believe. And can you? In the past, we've had different links between directors general and directors of research. We had one in which it was we had Jack Doyle for ILRAD point of view, in which it was all done very well, but in that office. And now we've got the pair of you. One thing that concerns me is that because you do seem to get on very well, and you both agree with each other, and you both pat each other on the back, are we going to see you going on a crusade rather than being critical internally?
Very nice question. I'm not the crusader type. You know me quite well. And Carlos, we're always instructing him to pick his battles, so I think he's losing the crusade perspective, if he ever had it. It's important that we work together, and it's important that everybody work together in teams. I guess one of my observations over the many years of watching my predecessors that you've described is that this teamwork is very important. And that we talk a lot. We don't always agree when we're in meetings, or either in private more than in public. But no, it's important that we work together as a team. We've tried to do that, I think.
Which brings me to the question I should have asked at the beginning. I mean, to trying to do the plan, you've got lots of energy, you're always busy, and you're running around and bombarding us with things. Are you a control freak?
No, I think I'm quite the opposite, but when you come into a new position, you need to try to explain to people what your vision could be. But they will come back to you, and that's how we came up with this. This is not mine. This is from the whole team. And now pushing it much further than I would have pushed it myself. So that's what I like. Like you saw this morning, we have a team. We're trying to have an empowered team who will go much, much further than any individual could ever go.
Okay, but still, you said you're trying to communicate with people since you've been here, whatever. It's quite a lot of volume. I mean, if you look at, we'll come on to this diagram you've got there. I mean, there are 6 objectives, and they each ranges from 16 to the shortest one to 37 words. We've seen all sorts of documents that have come through on different policies, and that is the old ILRI policy manual. So clearly, as far as you're concerned, size matters, and I'm just, there's so much information and so on. Is that necessary? Is that really important?
Well, it's like a house, so you need to have a foundation before you can build up the walls. And in administration, we had some foundations, but not all the foundations. So we need to finish building the foundations, and that's the policies that we need to have. So maybe I've gone a little bit fast.
You've gone fast. You think you've gone fast? Okay.
No, I don't think I've gone fast enough. People tell me I'm going fast. I don't think I'm going fast enough.
Now, if I could, thinking of all those here at ILRI, I think I can genuinely say that you're the only one to have produced impact. And here it is. And that was and that was a very clever way of doing it, I might say, because no one's going to be saying, God, he never has impact. Tell me, who is this targeted at?
Well, that is targeted to a range of projects. Let me tell you the story about impact.
Because not the whole story. Now, moving on slightly, systems evolution. Systems evolution is thought here to be very sexy. We hear talking about, but the answer lies in systems evolution, we always hear. But my feeling is, and you can tell me that I'm wrong, is so many of those particular populations that we're targeting our work at are systems that aren't evolving at all. In fact, that's the problem. They're exactly the same as they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Is that so?
I completely agree. Well, that's what we call the cold spots.
Cold spots.
Not everything. We don't need to identify a hot spot all the time. cold spots are also valid, and perhaps there's a whole development agenda for places that are not going to evolve as rapidly. The key here is to see, well, how many poor do we have in these systems? Can ILRI do something about them? And can we link to the right partners in these regions? But we recognize, we're not always trying to find just the hot, sexy bits. Huh?
Oh, I don't believe you, but nor about the science either.